shall we accept those minutes?
Sure, sounds good to me.
Okay, we have 1, 2, 3, we have 5 members here, so that's a quorum. So that's amazing, because there were a number of people who couldn't come. So I'm glad that works. Does anybody have non-agenda items that you'd like to shoehorn in here this evening?
Well, I'd like to talk a little bit about the series of dialogues that the Bangor Daily News has started on climate change and its implication for the coast of Maine.
Okay. So we're going to add non-agenda items at the end, but I'd just like to
Okay.
know what they are.
That's it.
So you're wanting to talk about the Bangor Daily
Now,
News?
just very briefly to call it to your attention, because I think it's valuable stuff.
Okay.
I also just wanted to ask, and I don't think it's on here, about what happened to the letter. I think it was Pete and Bruce, or I kind of forget. We're gonna write about the committee favoring zero net standards of a certain type, maybe for the any new town buildings. You remember that?
I do remember that. I do remember the discussion. I don't remember what happened to it. I think unless Pete, are you with us? He's muted, so I don't know if he's actually. No,
He
he
was
can't.
on, he was talking.
Yeah. Pete, are you there? Okay. So my understanding was that he was going to send around a letter, and I don't remember receiving it, but that doesn't mean I didn't receive it. So I don't have information for you on that, and I think we can ask Pete when he comes back about
I'm
it.
here. I was just muted. I think the whole COVID thing nipped that in the bud, but we should probably bring that back to onto the front burner.
So I don't remember what the status of that letter is. Pete, do you?
I
still-
don't believe that we've done any work on that.
Okay. And so how do we pursue that moving forward?
I think I'll have to go back and review the minutes, honestly, to even know what we had decided. That was all pre-COVID.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty far along, a letter just saying that we'd like to have zero.
Oh,
net
so there is
energy.
that's right. I made a draft letter and circulated it. Now that rings a bell.
Good. So do you think that we could kind of sew that up by email?
I don't see why not.
Okay, does that, so what we're talking about, Beatty and Heather, is we're interested in having, weighing in on via a letter to the select board to say that we would advocate for new buildings built by the town or that the town would take ownership of to be zero net energy. So that we don't have, we've kind of been looking at the possibility of, say, the Snowball Lodge being built and it being paid for by others and then given to the town, and the town then would be responsible for maintaining and running it and all those expenses pertaining to that. So even though the town would not be in charge of design and build, it would be responsible for the expenses. So we just kind of want to weigh in on that issue. So that's what that's about. All right. So select board priorities. Now, I told you I'd have a conversation with Bob Falciani. regarding where they're at, and he promised a letter. As it turns out, he sent that. I called him when I didn't see it on my inbox, and he literally just sent it after we already started this meeting, so I could read through it and summarize that. If you'd like to know, the town is going to be talking on Tuesday about the status of climate change resiliency and renewable energy and energy conservation. Those are priorities the town set last year. And basically, in order to keep those items on the town's agenda so they don't slip off, they're just going to be bringing it up at the meeting. But there are other projects. Let's see. Do you mind if I just read to you these few paragraphs that he just sent at 5:30? You okay with that?
Sure.
Yes, can you also forward it to me just so I have it for the minutes?
You betcha. Mhm.
Yeah.
All right. Brief summary of what will be discussed and the statuses for tomorrow evening. The performance contracting with Siemens. Now, just as a quick summary of that, that's a contract that we have set up with the company called Siemens that will be that will have evaluated the town buildings for their energy use and make recommendations as to how they could be better, more energy efficient. So that's a contract. Siemens, the company Siemens is working on it. So here it is. The performance contracting with Siemens is far along for town buildings and the Snow Bowl. I expect a matrix of energy savings options to be submitted within the next 2 weeks. The report matrix will include the library. We have also introduced this idea to our school system. Also, Maria Libby was very responsive. She is the superintendent of schools. It will lag the other buildings being the town hall, public safety, public works, wastewater, library, and Snow Bowl. So that's pretty awesome, really. From the matrix that Siemens will present, the town will need to select the items that make sense and then release Siemens to execute the projects. The town will have no payment on established energy savings until 1 year after installation. That's number one, performance contracting with Siemens. Number two, we are expecting 3 best and final proposals from solar energy entities by the end of August. They will be net energy bills credit proposals for the town's total electrical needs. I would expect the town to address the selection of the best proposal in early September. This was delayed a little due to COVID, but it is on track again. As I told you, we will not let this linger any longer. I'm actually pleased we were able to keep these initiatives moving forward. We have been rather consumed with numerous key issues over the past month or so, not the least of which is the school assessment issue recently announced to the public by Maria. A lot of our energy will be consumed with this issue for the next weeks. I'm not familiar with the school assessment issue, and I don't know what that entails in terms of town use, town.
Oh, there was, I think he's probably referring, there was something about Rockport didn't get assessed as much, got assessed more than we get or something. It was a dispute as between Rockport and Camden and possibly other towns about who should have to pay how much of the school budget, I
Okay.
think.
So I just want to mention with regard to the best and final proposals from solar energy entities, when he says for the town's total electrical needs, I am interpreting that as the municipal needs rather than all of Camden's needs. I do not know for a fact, and if I had gotten this a little bit earlier, I would have given him a call to have him clarify that. I left a message for Tom Hedstrom requesting a update on the LED streetlight switch out, but I was a bit of a procrastinator in preparing for this meeting, and so he did not get back to me prior to the meeting. I have observed that many have gone in, certainly in our neighborhood. So I imagine he is pretty far along, if not done with that. Does anybody else know about the LED switch outs?
No, but it is happening. I've seen his truck.
Yeah, great. Also, I don't know what the status of whether a summer intern was hired by Jeremy for climate change resiliency. There was supposed to be a sustainability intern that was hired by the town for the summer. And my understanding at the beginning of the summer was that that was still going to happen. I don't have an update on whether it did and what the results were. Does anybody else?
Anita, can you hear me?
Yes.
I think it would be important to put on our agenda that we should follow up once the streetlights are all changed over with procedures and policies for neighborhoods to decide which lights they would like to either dim or turn off, and what that procedure would look like, and ask Audra to develop that procedure, because that was, if you recall,
It's
they were
been
going to
part
just
of the discussion.
that was part of the discussion, but I think that will be something that we will have to prod and poke a bit.
Yeah, so I guess that, we did mention that a number of times in that context, and I guess that the town decided, let's switch all the lights and then we'll think about it.
Exactly. So that
In
we're going to
any
have to hold them to that.
case, that is the way it played out. So that would be the next follow-up. I agree. Thanks, Pete. So I am also interested in knowing what the select board is going to do regarding the watershed recommendations. My understanding is that's not something that would be discussed at tomorrow's select board meeting, which is an update on previously set priorities, but will rather be discussed at their workshop on the August 28th when they're looking at future priorities. So we want to be tuned in 10 days to that, to the select board and the workshop, which I believe we can attend, but not really. I don't know if we can actually provide input, but we certainly can beforehand.
Excuse me, Anita, is that a workshop specifically for the watershed recommendations or for other things? Okay.
And I looked on the town calendar and the workshop is not even listed. So I was looking for, okay, are you going to list the workshop and what you plan to talk about? I only know about the workshop by talking directly with Bob Falciani about it. Or what I should say is, he mentioned it to me that they were having that workshop. So what I would like to see, for one, is that, well, we've got two things now that we could prod the select board to be sure they cover in that discussion. Three things. We've got the build zero net energy buildings. So that we could ask them to discuss. And we could ask them, we could ask how to proceed with the LED lights, reducing number and intensity. And we could talk about the watershed school priorities. You guys agree with those items at least?
Yeah, and, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, on the watershed school priority, that one of they put a really heavy emphasis on having a climate employee, someone who's,
Yeah.
I forget what precise phrase they used, but having someone perform basically the functions that Davis Saltonstall has in Rockland and or perhaps some others. And I just wondered whether we would want to consider, really emphasizing and supporting that kind of a concept. And I was thinking of it in the context, you were just saying you don't know what happened with the intern, which that was kind of what they were saying initially. Well, we will have this intern for a while, but maybe we should make a little more active, or put in a little more active plug support, whatever, for at least part-time, somebody that would be an employee.
I think that's an excellent idea, Sarah, and I think the Watershed School report emphasized that. And I also think that since Rockland has a sustainability expert in the person of Davis Saltonstall, and Belfast has this climate crisis committee with a sustainability manager, who I believe is John Beal. I'm not sure of that. He may just be a person on the side, but I think once you get a person in that position, then they can work with similar people in adjacent communities, because this is a problem that faces us all. And I think it's important for us to understand that you don't end it when you get to the town line of Camden.
That's good, Nancy. So, okay, we've got some good priorities to be bringing forward to them. I think I've been very pleased that they've done as well as they have to pursue these priorities over and above, almost, in terms of the performance contracting. That's been really great. Go ahead, Heather.
I was just going to add, in addition to Rockland and Belfast, there's a woman in a sustainability position for the town of Falmouth who's been there for a number of years. So she's run through a number of initiatives, and her name is Kimberly Darling. So just if it's another helpful example in terms of, looking at a job description or someone to talk to for a comparable position. I spoke with her earlier this year, and she's really helpful and has done a bunch of good projects there.
What's her name again?
Kimberly Darling.
Darling, like someone you really like?
Wait,
Like Darling Motors, yes.
Or like that?
And she's in the town of Falmouth.
Great. Okay, so I think I'll try to get a meeting with Jeremy to see where we're at. Do we want to delegate some of these things? I'm happy to follow up with Jeremy on the sustainability intern. And Pete, are you going to follow through with the letter about zero net energy buildings?
Sure. Sure, I can dig that back up and send it back around for final comment.
Okay, great. The street lights, we want to pursue. I'd be happy to meet with Audra on that, unless someone else would prefer to do that.
Well, this goes back, I guess, several years and has never really been discussed. very much subsequently accept as something that we want, but I don't really know very clearly what it is we'd be pushing for here. I mean, Pete just described it as saying neighborhood should somehow decide, which that sounds kind of.
Yeah, I can
Um,
imagine my neighborhood would love to have the street light that I hate. I would love to have it turned off, but I don't think my neighborhood would agree to it.
So,
And, you know, we need to keep walking, as I keep interjecting, I think the usefulness of lights for encouraging walking in town and pedestrians also needs to be considered.
right.
Well, I
So-
can just give you my my own experience when I lived out on Ferncliff Drive. This was 24 years ago, or a dozen years ago, where there was a street light that was bothersome, and I canvassed all my neighbors, and they were all in agreement. And we went to the town, and they said, "Okay, we'll take it out." So I think there should be a process by which some of these lights are, because if you look at just take a look at some of the lights on our streets, even in the downtown section. If you're trying to present something that is going to be some uniform illumination for walking, that's great. I would fully support that. But there are certain places where there's a light placed in a location that is not in relation to any other light, and so there's no, in other words, you could get to that light and then there would be a long section with no lights and then another light. What I'm saying is there's no rhyme nor reason to where the lights are placed now. So I would say that in addition to being able to petition for lights being turned off, you could also petition and say, we need, this is not adequately lit, in a way that makes sense. So that's a bigger issue. But the other thing to remember is that these are all connected, wirelessly connected. So there could be ways for in other words, the town could dim lights after 11 o'clock at night, or turn certain lights off after 11 o'clock at night, or 12 o'clock, or whatever it is you might say. And then lights would only go back on for snow emergencies or things like that. And that's all with a couple of keystrokes, those things can be set up. So we have to be thinking about how to do that and what those policies look like. How do you petition the town to do that? And that's likely to be a fairly involved, multi-step process that we should be thinking about and helping the town to think about.
I
The
think-
other aspect of that, Pete, that I think is very interesting is the business of involving the neighborhood. I think that we too
We're
often,
not talking about making executive decisions here. We're
no,
talking about coming up with a clear process and a clear policy that can always be adjusted neighborhood by neighborhood should that not work for them. So it's basically, whether it's, okay, we definitely want streetlights at every intersection. Maybe in between the intersections, does the neighborhood want that light that's in between, or does it not want the light in between? Or just maybe looking for a set of policies that is in place in another area. But I agree with Pete that the advantage that we have now is that these are controllable remotely and also dimmable remotely. So a policy could say after midnight, they go down to a much lower intensity. So
Yeah, and we can look to Kennebunk's policies and ordinances on streetlights, because Peter Talmadge did this work 20 years ago. So, we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
great. Does anyone want to volunteer to sort of chase down the LED streetlight policy development? I think, this is not going to be something that happens quickly because we want to propose something. We want to first do some research, see what's logical, then talk to maybe order or present to the select board and say, we would like to present something. Is that okay with you? You know, you got to go through the right, jump through the right hoops. And we certainly want to have a process that people can weigh in on.
I'll take that on.
Okay.
Unless anybody else has a burning desire. I'm gonna take that as a no. Polite tittering in the background. I'll take that as a no.
Well, what is it you're gonna do? Are we gonna try to have something by the 26th of August?
No.
No.
I would say that what I would do is start the process rolling by which we start to bring the ideas around what this new technology, the flexibility that this new technology allows us, and how can we best leverage that new technology in ways that are beneficial to both, saving energy and to maximizing the walkability of our streets, and to come up with some sort of a town-wide plan for what that might look like. I see that as a, conservatively speaking, a 3-year project.
Great. I think it would be kind of good to, I don't know if we can get on the next agenda for the select board, the actual public select board meeting. I think that workshop is going to be before it.
Yeah, I
but-
actually, I don't think we should be on that. I think let's wait till it's done. Wait till we can, the select board can, trumpet the success of having it done and how much energy that we're saving. And then we can say, okay, great. Now that we have the technology here, we've done a little research. Here's what we think might be, here's the discussion we'd like to have going forward. But I think it's a little bit premature to put that on the radar, honestly.
Okay, fair enough. Good point. All right, so what else are we following up here? So I'm going to talk to Jeremy about the sustainability intern, whether or not there was one. And then propose that an employee be discussed at the select board workshop. And then I am, do any of you have more clarity than I do regarding the recommendations by the Watershed School? Because we want to look through those recommendations and see what recommendations the select board will be discussing.
Yeah, I think you can boil it down to 2 things, and it makes it pretty straightforward. One is adopt the targets, the main state targets, and 2 is to hire somebody to make sure that the town is making progress on the main state targets. And that's pretty much the support in a nutshell.
Okay.
I would put in a bid for their recommendation of the development of an efficiency Camden program to retrofit or refit or whatever residential housing in more sustainable ways. And I was thinking, as I read their report, I was thinking, why not do this kind of program in concert with Rockport, Hope, Appleton, and Lincolnville, thinking of the high school kids and their enthusiasm for this kind of movement. Get them involved in it. That's one way to get their parents and their grandparents involved. I think it's an important thing for Camden to be thinking about. I keep pushing this idea that we're connected to other communities, and the high school is the most obvious way in which we are connected. And I'd like to see us using that connection to further our environmental goals.
Right. One thing that I thought was interesting is that Efficiency Maine, while they give a great rebate for efficiency like heat pumps,
Mhm.
they don't give a rebate for a heat pump heating system for a house if the person seeking the rebate does not live in it. In other words, if you're trying to make a rental more efficient, Efficiency Maine
Oh, I
is
see what
not
you're saying.
consent
Yeah.
in that.
Well, if you remember, is supposed to be reporting. I mean, maybe this will even be in the discussion tomorrow because it's already a goal to have an efficiency Camden, I
Let's
think.
hope we hear from him tomorrow.
He, he said we would use funds that were available to the town through certain
We-
grant. I forget what you call those.
There's, there are
Yeah, past
five
grants that
different
people have made.
trust funds. And the thing about that is, I mean, that is wonderful because what it will do is it's leveraging those trust funds, which are directed towards low income people in town. So it's just basically doubling up on the, well, I don't know whether it's officially doubling up, but it's increasing the rebates. By the way, you might find it interesting. I've been putting systems into this project house I'm renovating that I'm getting really close to finishing. And I decided to go with a heat pump hot water heater, which is something that Efficiency Maine is incentivizing with a substantial rebate. So they do rebate for the hot water heaters, but not for the heating system for the house, which I thought was kind of odd. But I was successful in getting an in-store rebate for an $1,100 hot water heater from Home Depot. And that in-store rebate was $850. So when I left the store, I hadn't paid more than $260 for that. So the rebate was, if you get the right paperwork in place ahead of time, it was instantaneous, and it was pretty impressive, $850 off. Just thought you'd like to know.
That's good.
So if any of you need new hot water heaters, that is going to be going on through June 30th, 2021, those rebates.
This is some state rebates or I don't,
It's a state sponsored through Efficiency Maine. It's a rebate that Home Depot is doing.
well, we don't want to, yeah.
Anybody, any reseller in the state of Maine is doing it. It's part of the Efficiency Maine. It's that program is
say-
probably
Yeah.
5 years. It's about 5 years old, that program.
Okay,
meant to
it's
say
the
they're
regular
probably-
one that, because we've gotten that too on 3 different ones, I think. Yeah,
Exactly.
okay.
Anita, I'm going to give you a call if you don't mind, because we'd love to look at some options like that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's I was kind of blown away, this humongous expensive hot water heater rolling out the door with it and getting that instant rebate. So the advantage of those kinds of rebates as opposed to the mail-in is you don't have to come up with the money and then wait for the thing to be rebated in the mail. So it actually makes it a lot more affordable for a lot of people if they don't have to come up with that money up front. So the watershed school report, which we received at the end of July, does anyone want to discuss that, or are we able to read it, or shall we discuss that at the next meeting?
I would just add that I thought it was very impressive. And I told Janet that in an email interchange. And I think she felt a little shortchanged by the lack of reaction from the town. But she also admitted that that has to do with COVID and, all of the problems with that. But I think they did a fantastic job. I'm sorry she's leaving.
Great.
You'll
Should,
be interested to know that Watershed has just hired my successor and Janet's successor in one. She's a PhD scientist, oceanographer who is deeply interested in climate change. So she'll be taking up the reins, and I think that although Janet was fantastic, I think we've got a really great solution. So be
And her
heartened by
name,
that.
her name, Pete, her name?
Mila Placevic.
What's the last name?
Placevic. So Plasevic.
should we as a committee maybe write at least some thank you or something note to Janet and to the school to the committee, the kids, not the committee, the class and Janet and the school, thanking them for their good work on
Absolutely.
this?
I think that
That's-
would be a great
that's good.
idea.
Yeah. Okay, I'd be happy to write that up and send it around. That's a good idea. Definitely. So, I emailed the library about the Saving Snow film. Whether there would be other options for watching it. I checked on Kanopy, Kanopy, which is the, I don't know whether you guys are familiar with it, but there are a lot of films that we can view for free as members of the Camden Public Library. You need your library card number and put that into Kanopy and sort of register. If you go to the website at the public library, and I can't remember how I found it, but I was able to stumble my way there. Kanopy, spelled with a K, you register, use your library card number, and then you can view the whole library of films that they have at no charge. However, they don't have the Saving Snow film, and what the librarian recommended to me is that I can certainly send them Kanopy an email and suggest that film and give reasons for it. So that's something to keep in mind, is that we can make recommendations to Kanopy as to what films relating to energy we might like to have them provide to viewers.
I haven't looked at what the movies are that SIF's going to be showing, out at the drive-in, the new drive-in they built.
Yeah,
I
they've
would
had
guess some of them, they're all documentaries, and I would guess some of them will be.
You talking about the drive-in on the RES campus, the old RES campus?
Yeah.
RES,
Shot-
Rockland
Shotwell
Elementary.
Dragon.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah,
Yeah,
Shotwell Drive-In, that's right.
it's a great idea. Those are, nice family films that they're providing. So it's great.
Well, they're all documentaries from the Camden International Film Festival.
Are
It's
they?
all documentaries. And I would guess, a bunch of them will be environmentally oriented. I don't know whether they'll exactly fit
Yeah.
that.
Right. Fantastic. So the Bangor Daily News conversation.
Yeah. That's very interesting. They're doing it, I think, once a month for 4 times. And I listened to the August one, which was on climate change resiliency as far as our coastal communities are concerned, and identifying our risk horizon, which is something that I hadn't thought about. What is our risk horizon? How much time do we have? Penobscot Bay estimated to rise 10 feet by 2100, and actually rising faster with each passing year. So what they said, and we're talking, this was John Beal, the guy from Belfast, was talking on this program, which also included Susie Arnold, who's the scientific advisor for Island Institute, and several other people who are really interesting. 7,400 acres goes underwater for every foot of ocean rise in Belfast. Same may not be true in Camden because we don't have so much low-lying land as Belfast has, but a lot of our raised land is in fact filled land, which is even more vulnerable. So the discussion was all about the invasion of salt marshes, the loss of environmental life from the invasion of salt marshes, the loss of tax base from the invasion of maritime enterprises, et cetera. And discussing also the various programs that are available through the state for mitigating this kind of thing for communities to access. Next time in September, they're going to be talking about our maritime industry and ocean rise. And I recommend these very highly. They've had a really good turnout of interesting people to talk about these things. People who are very actively involved. So I recommend going to the BDN website and looking for their climate change resiliency subjects.
If you, Nancy, if you want to send me a
I will
link,
do
I can
that.
probably find
Yeah.
it. I'll stick it in the minutes.
Yep.
Is that okay, Anita?
Yeah, that's great.
Now, you know, I have this presentation on the Mid-Coast Co-Housing Project on
Yes, I was just going to ask you about that,
Oh,
Sarah.
okay.
Would you like to proceed with that?
Yes, a couple of things on this. You may all recall when Roxana Patain is her name, a woman from York, came and gave a presentation to our committee, well, more than a year ago. I don't know exactly when it was. I should have looked that up. But in any case, gave a presentation about a project in which she's involved that is called, now at least it's been dubbed Mid-Coast Co-Housing Project. And it's the notion would be that the sponsors for the project are herself and 2 other women from down in the York area. They would all move up here and live in this basically and handle the financing of it. Now she, and I'll just kind of go through as an update on this, what she has told me about where things stand. She said that we have a concept, she says. It is to partner with Camden to create 30 to 40 homes for purchase in a co-housing community. All of these homes would be 0 carbon, and 1/3 to 1/2 of them would be at income restricted prices. I think that's basically another name for affordable housing, which probably is thought of as better. I don't know. But it's affordable housing is the notion. Then it would be a diverse intergenerational year-round group of families and would be clustered on about 4 acres. Out where they're now thinking was that they would be clustered on about 4 acres out of the 77 acres owned by the town at Sagamore Farms. So, and this she didn't say, but from me, they're basically, I think it's quite clear they are one of the three projects, and actually probably I will say I'm pretty convinced. One, the furthest along, as Jeremy mentioned at a recent select board meeting, Jeremy Martin, as having expressed interest in that property. Now, what I'll go on now back to what Roxanne said and then return to that. She says that what they're looking at is a neighborhood within walking distance to downtown where you know your neighbors and where you share meals and conversation, similar to other Camden neighborhoods such as Pearl Street, Mill Street, etc. Then I would say she then goes on to make a case for how the project would fit in with Camden's goals. And in particular, she says, our commitment to affordable housing while preserving the land and access to trails fits in with the town. It would be a zero carbon community, which could also be an element of Camden's climate strategy. And I will add here on my own that I understand that this, I think, would be the first such project in May. Now, I have to do some more research on that, and I will do that and confirm or not, but I think that's the case.
Did you say the first of such projects in Maine? Is that, I didn't understand what you just said.
As a co-housing project, as a zero net energy co-housing.
Sarah, I think there's a co-housing project in Belfast.
There is, it's not zero net energy.
I see.
Yeah, you're right, there is. And it's kind of a similar model, except that it doesn't have zero net energy. And I don't know whether it has affordable housing. But it is the same, it does share some ideas. Okay, now back to what Roxanne said. She said it would provide property tax revenue while preserving most of the Sagamore Farm parcel for use for other purposes, and that it would be young families with children, thereby helping to spread the school cost burden. Then she talked to me, we had a conversation about this. She said that she and her two partners had first walked around Sagamore Farm in November, that they really loved the site, and have since then been exploring whether their co-housing project, which they had already designed, could work on that land. She says they understand Camden's goal of having the most practical and best use of Sagamore Farm for the community. And they know the select board and town staff have considered ideas from an industrial complex to housing and office buildings to a public park, and that the consensus appears to be that residential housing is the best option today for that property. But she understands, or they understand, concern for preserving the access the public has enjoyed on the land, especially walking and bike trails.
Yeah. Okay, I'll come over in 5 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
She said we've had she said they've had an exploratory conversation with the select board, but there's no commitment, that they hope to return to the board in September at a public meeting and hear from people in the community so that they could incorporate ideas early in the process. Those are the kind of main points of it. I guess I would say, as I on a person, my own take on this is, as far as I can make out with a little research, that this zero net co-housing project is definitely something that Jeremy and I think Bob and other members, if Mark were here, he could tell us more, I'm sure, but have been looking at. And probably is the most active candidate for that property at this point of the three Jeremy mentioned publicly. And I would also suggest that we might want to consider getting some more information on this in writing or otherwise from Roxanne, and thinking about whether the committee, given the zero net status and that it might be the first one of these that in the state that could perform be a sort of model, that whether we want to, and to what degree we might want to support it as a committee or as at least as individuals who are members of the committee. Anyhow, that's the update on that.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So the next steps in that case would be, well, I don't know if we have enough people to vote on whether we want to come out with a statement in support. Sarah, what I heard you say is that we need more information from Roxanne before we know. whether
Well,
we-
I don't know. I'd be happy to, I kind of feel like I know enough about it, but I've done reading on the different concepts and things, and I know other people haven't, so I don't know how others would feel. And we don't know for sure what the other projects are, but I think some kind of statement about the desirability of
Zero
or
energy.
of at least further examination and consideration of a project of this sort.
Yeah.
Do we
Um,
need a quorum to support it? And do we have a quorum right now?
Well, we had 5. Let's see, we got Pete and Bruce and Nancy and Sarah and Anita. That's 5 and out of 8. So that's a quorum. Sarah, I hear a motion. Would anyone like to second that?
Well, I'll second it.
Okay, Nancy seconds it. So is there any further discussion on that motion? So basically what I'm hearing Sarah say is that we would like, that we could create, I would say that we create and send around a statement that the Energy Committee would send to the Select Board where we're in support of the concept of a zero net energy housing community for Camden. Did you, Sarah, are you proposing that we support it at this location? We don't know where on the 77 acres they want to put it. Do you, Sarah, or do they?
I think there's not been a final determination on that.
I think,
I can-
personally, I would say we should support the idea, but
Concept.
not a specific location and not a specific project at this time. Wait for it to come to greater fruition.
Mhm.
I would be, yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay, so your second, Nancy, is
So in the
basically,
formulation of the motion, we can say that it would be writing supporting the idea of zero net energy co-housing project for the.
well, I don't think you need to say co-housing, really.
Yeah.
Just
Because the
housing?
co-housing is a whole different, is a
Just housing. you want?
concept
Zero.
that is
net
not
housing
critical to
project.
zero net energy. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So you want to say a zero net energy housing project
The
development.
concept of a zero net energy housing project.
It could
Okay.
be one house, in other words. Is that what you're saying?
That incorporates, I would say a proportion of affordable housing
Yeah,
that
that's
that
good.
incorporates some affordable housing.
So
And
we're not just supporting a bunch of millionaires who want to build zero net energy houses on Beauchamp Point or something like that.
This is Bruce. Can I ask, I think everything I've heard, it sounds like a very positive initiative. I wonder how it fits within a priority list for this committee. And not knowing enough about what the repercussions of pushing this, which it sounds like it would be a really great match, but not knowing what that then might mean for a solar expansion out in that area, which is another one of our priorities, I thought at one point. So I guess I'm sorry, I'm thinking as I talk here, and that's, I know I do that sometimes, but if our priorities are A, B, and C, is this, does it fit within those? Do we
I
want to
think-
use language in the statement that actually sort of supports the concept where it could be complementary to other principles or priorities for us?
Well, the way that I'm hearing what Sarah was presenting is, what Sarah and Nancy were suggesting is that we don't have to say where.
Mhm.
We don't have to say that we want it here at Sagamore. I like the idea of a zero net energy, supporting a zero net energy housing development that incorporates some affordable housing. What else? That's what I'm hearing. Is that-
How about this, Bruce and Anita, if I said something to because I could write a letter which I would circulate and then people could comment on it, but
Okay,
something like the committee would favor I would like to see the select board give serious consideration
Or recognizes the advantages of such a blah, 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 you know?
of this of such a project within the context of our overall energy goals or something like that.
Yeah.
Would that make you more comfortable, Bruce?
Sure, yeah, I like that.
Sarah, you said within the context of, I didn't hear the last phrase.
Within the context of the town's overall energy goals?
Yeah, good.
Sorry, guys, I'm going to have to leave. I have,
Nancy, is that what you second, something?
yeah, I would second that.
Yeah.
I think Sarah's very clever at developing this kind of language, so I'll stick with her, okay?
Okay,
My
Sarah, that's
second is
perfect.
in there, all right?
Thank you. I think that's the last thing we wanted to discuss. We've got our assignments. Pete has 2 assignments. Anita has a couple of assignments. Do you want me to go over those assignments at this point? And Sarah has an assignment. Speedy?
Vicky had her hand up, I saw.
I don't know if I'm muted. No, I'm here. My goodness.
I can hear you.
I would just like to be on the agenda sometime to ask what I think I asked last time I went to an energy meeting, that you consider tree planting as part of your energy saving portfolio. And I mean, my vision of the future is everybody's going to turn on their air conditioner and not realize that trees provide this service and also enhance the attractiveness of the town. And what's happening now is a lot of really old trees are coming down all at the same time, and there are a lot of spaces, and there's not a system of replanting them. The garden club said for lack of money. Anyway, it's a big story, but the energy committee could just put that in their pack of tools to support.
Right. So what kind of, given that we have a street tree program for the town, what would you like the energy committee to do proactively?
I'm not asking them to do anything except support it technologically, scientifically.
I'm trying to figure out what the action item might be.
Well, the Energy Committee is supposed to both mitigate and help adapt to climate change.
Right. Yeah, I'm not saying we wouldn't agree with this, Speedy. I'm just trying to understand how we would take action on your recommendation.
I don't think you'd take any action until we actually get a program that is accelerated. I mean, you could say that such a program has to be accelerated because inadequate right now, totally inadequate.
Can you explain to the committee how the street tree program that is in place is inadequate and what you would like
Yes,
the town
how
to
much
do?
time do you want me to spend? Well, initially, and still, the town and the resident and the garden club split the money to pay for trees. And there's only a certain amount of money from the garden club and a certain amount of money from the town. And then that sort of is an incentive for the resident to say, yes, I want a street tree to shade the, they don't say this, they're not aware that it shades the asphalt, but they're not aware that it has a heat component. But over time, the garden club has kind of forgotten about this. They've also moved to much larger trees so that they're down to 6 trees a year and sometimes 4. And that doesn't fill in the spaces. It doesn't, we have a lot of trees. So, you know, we are a tree covered town. But what I'm saying is that they're getting thinner. And the garden club doesn't really, well, this year they didn't even make any money at all. But I think more money has to come from other places, and maybe there should be some other standards, and there should be education so that citizens decide to plant some trees on their own so as not to, there's a long backup waiting for trees. This year and recent years, they haven't even advertised, so nobody even knows there's a tree program, which is an inadequate program. So they've decided not even to talk about it. I mean, it's just kind of dying on the vine. And Conservation Commission, if they get, Allison says they're going to put up a new Conservation Commission, and energy should be behind it. The garden club should be happy to maybe have money coming from other sources. So I'm not really asking you to do anything, but I think that being, I assume, a science-based committee, that you could provide that kind of support of avoiding heat islands, even though we're a small town. We're going to be increasingly affected. The reason I'm bringing it up now is sort of waiting till it got hot. Well, it got hot, and now it's probably done for the year. Who knows? But it's going to be harder and harder to get trees planted as the weather gets more difficult. So getting ahead of it.
So, yeah, so could I translate your recommendation as increasing the public relations and written
Consider that
articles
an act.
about the
Sure.
tree program?
Excuse me, sorry, I interrupted you. The increasing public awareness.
Awareness about the street tree program in Camden?
Well, we wouldn't necessarily want them to know what an inadequate program it is right now. What we want them to know is how necessary it is. And then, I mean, I think there's still going to be money in town. I'm not so worried about the money. I'm a little worried about, oh, we have to plant big trees. We can't plant small ones. I'd like people to do some of it on their own too. Now.
You'd like people to do some on their own.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, back at the ranch, we've got oak trees being defoliated by the brown-tailed moth.
Well, that doesn't help, does it?
No, so we're going backwards, and the town is
increasing.
There are ways to reduce the impact of the moths in town for high-profile located trees. It's pricey, and what we want to know is what the town is willing to invest in that. And certainly if they're investing in saving the very large trees that we have that are literally endangered by this pest,
They're
I
gonna
mean,
be more too.
we could lose some major trees if they are defoliated annually. For 3 years in a row, it could be, we could lose a tree for that. So how much money should we, we need to get the town to invest some serious money in protecting those trees every year. Right? So that's a whole nother, I mean, planting new trees is good. It's important. Saving the existing very large mature trees.
How about both?
Pardon? Both?
I said, how about both?
Yeah. And so to do that is what I see is a PR program and an advocacy program regarding the regarding the
There's a uniting idea in both of these is that
Yeah.
trees have value. So maybe the education part of explaining to people why they have value. I mean, the past Mainers were not very concerned about trees because they considered them, pulp and lumber. But we're talking about a town which is a little different from that. So the trees have other values besides pulp and lumber. And a lot of people know that more, but they don't know the heat part. And that's what I'm asking the Energy Committee for, is the heat part.
I for one am very much in favor of advocating for more trees and advocating for saving the trees we have. What form that will take would be Sarah Miller writing articles, Beatty writing articles, the Energy Committee representatives writing articles, advocating at the town level. Yeah, all of the above.
Yeah, I've wished for a long time that there was a town newsletter, even if it's only a e-newsletter. And for some reason, we haven't been able to do that. That kind of education could go out as it does in other towns, for instance, for recycling and all sorts of issues that people need to know about, just plain householders need to know about. Because people don't actually read newspapers.
Beatty, I think that we have the potential, we have the potential for improved advocacy and a town newsletter because the new town website only just came out. I discovered it, last week or whatever. I don't know when it actually came online, but last week when I went to the town website, it was like, oh, look what we've got. It's finally up. So there might be potential in our new improved website to have a newsletter.
In fact, Rick Siebold, who I left a message for Public Works today, and Rick called back because he's the tree guy, and he was suggesting that, putting that kind of information on, and I didn't even know that you could do that because I'm really out of it.
So that will take some exploring. That's a great first avenue to explore is how can we leverage the new website for awareness raising about programs like this?
About all the energy things that you're involved in and why.
Yeah.
And also what Nancy said before she left about the Bangor daily thing, they're talking about considerable acceleration. And I find people very unaware of that.
Well, right. So I'm sorry that Anna was not able to make it to our meeting today because she, I think she also has a great interest in these programs and might well step up to help write articles. We could conceivably volunteer committee members. Each meeting, we could have a different committee member step forward and write something. We just have to figure out the methodology and the venue for this awareness raising. The thing is that there's been such a serious balkanization of media. It's overwhelming. Have you ever run into the problem of how do I get the attention of Mr. X or Miss X? And you try email, you try texting, you try telephones, you try phone messages, and it turns out that Miss X is all over Facebook Messenger. But if you're not using Facebook Messenger, you're
Yeah.
not reaching Miss X. So each one of us have different ways that we can be best reached. But how the heck are you going to know that for each individual? I find it overwhelming.
I think balkanization is a good term.
Yes, I find it overwhelming to try to figure out how to reach people these days. There isn't just, I mean, yes, we can write in the Camden Herald, but what proportion of our citizens actually are reading the Camden Herald in addition to me? So I'm all over listening to ideas for that. I'm ready to hear them. Beta, you've done so much writing over the decades. You've done such an awesome job in raising awareness.
Well,
kudos to you for that.
We didn't get where I thought we were going to get. We didn't
you-
get there at all.
Have you run out of energy on the writing?
Actually, balkanization made me decide not to try to organize anymore.
So what, does anybody have recommendations as to what media we pursue or what methodology we use to raise this kind of awareness?
I mean,
You might want to pursue, or somebody, if it's the case that we could have a place to put things on the Newtown website. I think we should look into that, and we should get, well, to begin with, all the back reports from Watershed, which, as far as I hunted for them on the new website, and if they're there, I can't find it.
On the new website, they
Yeah,
were on the old one.
yes. But they're not on the new one. On the new one, the new report was never on the town website, as far as I know. And it should be there with, and then, you know, we could add other things like, you know, information on street trees or whatever. But we first need to figure out what the capability is and where that would be, and who we go through, if any, or whether we can post it ourselves, or how it works, right?
Bruce, does that sound like your kettle of fish?
Which specifically
Just exploring what the town website, how it's configured, and how the Energy Committee can provide public information on things of interest and concern to our citizens relating to energy.
I can do that. I think we talked about this about a year ago, didn't we? Sort of in lieu of that statement to go out with our tax bill.
Yeah.
We did. And I don't know where we left it, whether we left it at, well, let's see what happens when the new website
Yeah.
comes out.
I
I've
think
been very frustrated with how long that has taken, but the good news is that it's out now. So
the tax
we-
bill or I think didn't we get the feedback that other groups had already approached them and they thought that this would be overwhelming to the taxpayers, and
yes.
so they
with regard
turned
to
off that
tax.
idea. but
Yeah, with regard to tax bills, they weren't willing to go for it.
yeah.
So,
I can take a look at the website and maybe brainstorm a little bit. Um, I think your point though about how we all get our information from different media slash newsprint versus TV, Facebook, whatever it is. When I'm not on Facebook, but I like papers, but I don't get one faithfully every week or every day. So I think this is a real challenge, as you said. I think it's really
Yeah.
tough to find the way to get the message to the people that should receive it and would be acting upon it. You know what I mean? It's
right. And Allison has been all over the Facebook thing, and she's gotten a lot of response through that. But we older folks aren't accustomed to that and aren't really necessarily comfortable in that space. I mean, I don't mind it, but frankly, like if it's not on NPR, I don't know what's going on.
yeah.
I mean, that's
I
mine,
know what you mean.
right? So, but
kinda
who
national.
does that, right? How many of us do that?
I do.
It's so funny. I sent around an email to my nieces and nephews and kids, all right, the next generation down, the millennials, saying, I just read this in Economist and it's so cool. And here's a link and isn't this neat? And I got these almost like, okay, boomer responses, okay, boomer is an expression millennials use to, so yeah, you old folks. And it was like, yeah, we've known about that for 10 years, at least, maybe 15. And I was kind of like, okay, well, it was in The Economist finally, so now I know about it.
Yeah, that's a great newspaper. I do have a question for Beatty, I guess, if to kind of loop back to the trees. Is the goal to fill empty space with new trees, or to provide financial support for residents that have decided they want to put trees on their lots within the town?
Well, traditionally in town, we had financial support and we were trying to replace the elms that came down, which was really, dramatic and terrible and made town suddenly very ugly and bare looking.
Oh.
Then we plugged along, planting trees every year. And I would say that we planted 20 to 25 a year. And
Paid for by the town budget?
it was paid for by 1/3 the town, 1/3 the garden club, and 1/3 the resident.
Oh.
And the resident had to apply and choose a tree. We had a roster of as many as 10 different kinds of trees. And that program gradually fell away down to 6 trees. They're very big and have survived well until just recently when we got droughty and the watering is huge for these big trees. So,
I mean, would it be helpful, I mean, if that the impetus of the original program was the elm disease,
yeah,
and the model seemed to work for years, could you re-tag the program as a climate resilience
yeah, that's what I want.
/ beautification, or and then sort of resell the program that people liked and used for years?
Yeah.
And because I think if people had 1/3 of the cost, I mean, I don't know if the garden club would contribute 1/3 again, but
I think there needs to be outside fundraising. And one thing that the garden,
Half and half now. My neighbors have one. They just got one
yeah,
a month or so ago. And people pay half. It's at the moment $75 for a fairly good sized tree.
that sounds
And
pretty nice.
does that mean the garden club is not plugging in on that at this
well,
time?
neither the garden club nor the town want to put more than a certain amount of money up.
Yeah.
And maybe it's been the same every year. I haven't been following it at all. I've been doing a lot of other stuff. But I know that they're way behind, and there are a bunch of different reasons why they're way behind. And there should be a sort of multi-armed tree program to get more trees out. And I think even with this downswing, there's money in town that will go for trees if the program seems sort of sensible and strong. And the other thing is there's Project Canopy, which is the state run, and they are very gung-ho on town trees for energy reasons. And they have articles coming out in their newsletter. It's part of the Maine Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and what's the third one? Anyway, so
So
they have
is,
grants.
if we pick up the response to the watershed school report, is this something that could fit in within that as an option or a piece of a recommendation? I guess the watershed report is another question I've got. I've looked at it. I haven't studied it. I'm also really impressed with it, to be honest. They did a really great job. I wonder though, if there's a place for it to be within sort of the wrapping of our response to that report.
Well, I would wish that it had been in that report. I didn't hear mention of trees at any time. Trees are something we kind of take for granted, and using them for energy, except for burning, is something we haven't used. We put in air conditioners instead.
Well, I love trees, so my wife.
Well, the way they behave with asphalt, the way shade affects the effects of sun on asphalt is really dramatic.
Mhm.
It is dramatic.
And
Totally is.
that,
On a really burning hot day,
yeah.
the amelioration of climate under a tree is so obvious. It's so,
Yeah, and the trees even produce a breeze. So you have both the asphalt is not re-radiating the energy of the sun, which it picks up and then re-radiates slowly and makes everything hot for hours and hours. And it's called urban heat island effect.
Yeah.
So if you can get $850 off on a water heater, you'd think you could get $25 to $50 contributed on planting a tree that would help cool the house ultimately. But
So I would like to, I'd like to ask in conjunction with that, and I brought up the brown-tail moss. That's not a small problem.
yeah,
And I've actually been extremely interested in ameliorating this issue. And I've done a lot of work in making contact with, first of all, there's a group in Quebec that has developed a drone that can clip branches from the tops of trees and deliver them either directly to the handler or to
I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm gonna have to go as it's 7 pretty much. And I am obligated.
we'll be
to- I
closing the
really
meeting, Andy.
apologize. If there's more that should go into the minutes, can somebody send it to me? Could you, Anita?
Mhm. Yeah, well, we're finishing up at 7. It's 7 now. But I just wanted to mention that this is something that I've been pursuing, and it does relate to trees. It relates to saving the trees we have. But there's a great deal of expense involved in saving the trees from the brown-tail moth defoliation. And so that's an added expense in addition to planting new trees and making sure they get watered during their adjustment period. So thank you, Beatty, for that suggestion. It's
Yeah.
definitely energy and resiliency related. And I'm certainly in favor of keeping it on the table in our discussions.
Thank you.
Me too.
thanks.
Okay, shall we adjourn the meeting? In
Sounds
favor?
good. I second. Hey, the select board meeting tomorrow, is that open to us to listen in or?
Yeah, yes, but the discussion about the updating of the energy things is,
That
I
could be
was
done.
told, not really appropriate to be making suggestions at that time, because what they're doing is talking about previous priorities that they've set and how they followed up on them.
So we can listen, we shouldn't
Yeah.
contribute. Is the link in that message from, Janet, was it?
I think you can go on the website and look at along the top. I discovered it along the top of the banner. Like right
Okay.
now, I'm looking at
I'll look it up.
it says live on YouTube
Okay,
on my little window here of the Zoom meeting. And you can find a banner up at the top for YouTube select board meeting.
all right.
Just
That's great.
explore what you find. There is a link to the YouTube meeting.
Thank-
Okay, everybody, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Anita.
Sure. Thank you, Janice. He's in there in that dark window somewhere. BD.
Yep, bye.
All right, bye-bye.